Hi, Nick.
Hey, so now the tables have turned.
Hello, my friends.
Hi, Andrew.
Hey,
Hello. I expect to be back on camera here probably in I don't know, about maybe 15 minutes or so. But in the meantime, I'm definitely here and looking forward to this conversation.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. I thought this would be a great time to just have a just general spiritual discussion about a lot of the things going on. But you can ask me anything too, because you had expressed that interest of digging more into my background, although that is subjective whether or not background even means anything compared to the present moment. But it's just so much fun to have these discussions. I'm open to anything on the table right now.
Oh, that's awesome. I've definitely written some questions. I know Nick's got some things he's curious about too. Nick, do you want to get us started off here?
yeah, definitely. The You were saying that the past is kind of subjective, but I think that as the main driving force and creative force behind Ascension Works, I'm sure there's a lot of people that would like to know, just what drives you, what your goal is with Ascension Works. You're putting out all this great material for people to use as a resource in their journey, and I think a lot of people would like to know how you got to this point in your journey.
That's a great question. I feel like there's two different threads that have been interwoven into my past, which are the spiritual seeking and the broader disclosure categories, which to me represent like suppressed knowledge, suppressed information, which I feel is when I was in college when I first discovered a lot of the stuff about UFOs and the real good evidence that wasn't being presented in any good way up until that point. When I finally did the research, I realized I couldn't explain the abundance of amazing evidence of the UFO phenomenon, but also of all kind of metaphysical sciences. Some people call it noetic sciences. The fact that it's essentially proven statistically, such as through the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab, that we all have psychic abilities. That there's a mental thing going on that suggests the consciousness is a layer beneath physical reality. And so to me, it felt as though I'd gone my whole life sort of being lied to about the idea that material reality is the ultimate reality. And the UFO topic also seems to invite, the sense of mystery that breaks down the walls of people's programming, where it's like they have to go to fiction to get the sense of mystery, the sense of wonder. They have to sort of tune out of their current lives to get that experience that they're seeking, because they've been programmed to think that experience of a mystical reality where anything is possible is not actually the reality that their physical bodies are actually in. So for me, it's like there's a need to get information out that I felt very strongly when I started researching. And I did a great deal of research at the tail end of my college experience the last year. And I was so confused about what I was supposed to do with my life that I felt that I needed to research everything to get a sense of the bigger picture. And there was no end to that. It wasn't like there was some strong conclusion. There was just a feeling like there's a lot of poorly communicated information that people are desperately needing to hear. And that was what the core inspiration that I had is that, like, even me just burning DVDs, printing out the the Army's Special Operations Manual on retrieving extraterrestrial craft, that kind of thing, that was validated so many ways by Ryan Wood. And that was very impressive to me, that there's documentation, there's everything, that if I just put it together in a package of information and get that in people's hands, maybe there'll be a revolution. And it feels like it was the beginning of it with the internet. And I mean, it's totally evolved to this point where the information warfare is now on the level of algorithms, and it's a whole other context of waking people up now. But I continuously over the years shifted back into this feeling like I don't know how much any of this matters compared to teaching people about the seriousness of the religions and the truths that have already been communicated clearly. It's almost like every religion is like it's like a cookie trail path, and people can stop on any point that they want before getting to the deeper truths. And so religions themselves can be very useful and also very distracting if you're not continuously seeking further to take it more seriously, to figure out what the deeper meaning of love is, and truly unconditional forgiveness for everyone. So there's been kind of like a sine wave of going back and forth between, you know, just focusing on the most abstract spiritual philosophy and then focusing on the nitty gritty of what's actually going on that's being hidden from us, because it feels like there's a balance in the awakening of the planet that we need to sort of break free from all the shackles, which are information based and which are control structure based, in order to create the spiritual paradise where everyone is very awakened and aware of what's going on, and including the spiritual reality.
That's a great segue, Mike, to a question that I had actually that was along similar lines to what you were just talking about, which was I really want to hear you describe how you're drawn to the parts of the illusion that you will choose to become invested in, and to, you know, just as you've done so with disclosure, for example. I see you as both comprehending and embodying a transcendent truth that is well beyond and outside of the illusion. And then I also see you also plugged in certain areas to understand certain parts of the illusion. And I heard you just say that that's about explaining it to people so that they can start to understand perhaps how some of this misinformation has maybe kept them from understanding the truth. So yeah, tell me a little bit about that and how and why, I guess, extraterrestrialism and disclosure itself has drawn more of your kind of awareness and investment than other things that you might use to convey similar principles.
Well, I feel like every expression of humanity, every expression of knowledge and truth has a certain quality of spiritual metaphysical light behind it. And it's almost like a fire that you can feel when there's a very deep truth about, you know, the other side of the veil, about looking past our limited lens to have a sense of the infinite. So I feel like there are it really is like the breadcrumbs of the taste of the infinite mind when you begin discussing something that doesn't deal as much with the finite reality people are used to. And people don't have to, people can think of extraterrestrials and they can go down a path of fear and feel like this is a very terrible thing, that we just have another government system that happens to be in space. But you can also see the potential of there's actually infinite intelligence out there, because there's an infinite array of different kinds of intelligences. So becoming aware of extraterrestrials, to me, is connected to becoming aware of infinite potential and the infinite mind. And so although people might not take that catalyst of recognition of extraterrestrials and go that path, I feel like there's a greater doorway, a bigger, more tempting doorway for people to open up the doorway towards a grander sense of mystery of the unknown that can open up the heart of the infinite awareness.
Okay. So I like that. And I also like that you sort of touched on something that you and I have chatted about in this realm a little bit before, and that I have a little bit of sensitivity around some of the fear that can be inspired. And I don't necessarily mean that by extraterrestrials sort of broadly, but everything else that you're talking about, the misinformation and there's a lot to be dissatisfied with, obviously, and to not be okay with. And yet I still grapple with that sometimes, about when fear is coming in versus discernment, and how we make sure that when we're trying to inspire others to open up to more possibilities, that we're not opening doors of fear for them, which obviously they get to choose. But
yeah, that's a huge issue. And it was surprising to me as I became more connected to different conspiracy-oriented communities, how much people would get caught up on specific subject matter. And obviously, there's so many examples where people are hung up on political subjects, where they end up getting sucked into like a warfare mentality with the opponent, who happens to have, a mutually exclusive belief system that has been engineered for a long time to keep us divided. And there's all these traps that people can fall into, instead of continuing all the way to see that I'm going to phrase this another way. So it's like, there's a sense to me that the information that's been hidden from us has been hidden from us because of our innate power. If we rise up to hold that power as a collective and operate from a standpoint of freedom and liberation, instead of the standpoint of the philosophies of control. And so just generally recognizing that the matrix of information is based around philosophies of value around control instead of value around acceptance. Those all the different patterns, all the different false flag scenarios, all the different concealments of health knowledge. It seems like if people get enough of a taste of how much has been hidden from them, there is a potential for inspiration to begin the seeking, where you no longer need to be spoon fed the reality. You're now desirous of more and more and more of the truth of the real power that we possess. That there's nothing that's too good to be true, because there's always another layer of the truth. So for me, it's just kind of a matter of flooding people with enough light and truth that they're kind of overwhelmed with the realization that we don't need to be so attached to the material. But of course, like I said, there's all kinds of traps along the way.
And those traps.
One last.
What
Wanted one last question, and then I wanted Nick to jump in and see where this goes. But just to clarify, the thrust of disclosure, Mike, from your position, is it the control and that we are being misinformed, or is it that there is extraterrestrial life? And I don't mean to ask that pedantically, but I would like to know which is the most important thing that you would like people to understand about that.
Well, I feel like these are interconnected subjects, because you can't understand the bigger reality without understanding how we got to this point as a planet where we're collectively so confused. And so it feels like the controls of information are intimately connected to the wake-up process, that we have to break free from every system of control in order to fully step into the fullest truths.
That actually is perfect, because what I was going to say is that all these breadcrumbs, in religion and hidden truths and science that you were talking about, and you said you can keep following the breadcrumbs, but stop at any point along the way and get lost in that point and dive deeper into the fear. What were some of the moments for you? Like, what were some of the lightning bolt truths that you saw, whether in religion or disclosure or in health, that really gave you that peek behind the veil and helped dissipate your fear and possibly point people in directions, books or authors or people that would help them get to that point where they would start to drop the fear?
So there's so much to talk about with the different. So, I mean, my journey of awakening started with the Disclosure Project, which was Stephen Greer's project to bring out a bunch of government insiders. And, he was just one small part of just a wave of truth coming out. So certainly that was the biggest seed for me to get started. But another huge seed was the Edgar Cayce readings, discovering that there was this treasure trove of channeled material which was guiding people around all the different kinds of health ailments that existed when he was around, because he did 14,000 documented readings, and you can download all of them. You can search for different health subjects, different kinds of foods, and even different Bible verses. And I was reading there Edgar Casey's interpretation of certain Bible verses and realizing this was way more appealing and resonant than what I had thought of those verses previously. So it was as though he had a stronger command of the Christian religion while simultaneously having a stronger command of the way the body functions than anyone else had seemingly had since that time. Although so many aspects of what he was talking about with the health knowledge has now trickled into the mainstream alternative health knowledge community, even though that's taken a long time. But one of the biggest amazing examples to me is he said, you've been heard it said an apple a day keeps the doctor away, but I tell you an almond a day keeps the doctor away. However, what he was talking about was bitter almonds, which were the primarily known almonds of the day. And the bitter almond trees were banned from being grown in California. And that's a whole other subject that J. Edward Griffin talks about with the amygdalin substance, which is very much cancer fighting substance, which is it pulls at my heart that there's something so easy that you can just go on Amazon, even just look at reviews for apricot seeds, which has apricot seeds have a lot of the amygdalin content. And it's so valuable to be consuming just this one compound found in so many seeds. Apple seeds, people are taught that even apple seeds are poisonous. Don't let anybody have apple seeds. And that's one of the healthiest things you can be eating. So that was one of the kinds of health knowledge that just, it put a fire in my heart. Like, how many people could be so benefited if they open up to the fact they don't need all the, this is a complex subject. There's many ways in which people need to take care of their health to support themselves in fighting cancer. And ultimately the true thing that is most important is to overcome the metaphysical blockages. But I do feel like there's an inspiration of a metaphysical nature which coincides with the discovery of natural health opportunities that can help break free some of the issues people have metaphysically and physically. And fasting is another good example of that, where experimenting with fasting, I think, is a very empowering thing, because it shows you that there's like a deeper level to your attachment to food that you can work on, that's connected to a lot of health issues. So I just covered a couple examples there, I feel.
Yeah. So, and as you were talking about this wave, kind of breaching the physical and then going into the metaphysical, and the whole time your life was right down the middle as you went deeper into the metaphysical and it led you into the physical. So it sounds to me like you started with a lot of the physical truths and then it led you to the metaphysical truths. And so what would be so Edgar Casey would definitely be some of the metaphysical, and he talked about both ends of it. What would be, because I know the law of one had a large impact in your life, and what were some of the other things along those lines? Like as you started that transition from the physical down into the metaphysical, what were some of the deep readings and things that just, I mean, there's so many things that when you read them, you're like, yes. And whether you can prove it or not, you know it in your knower that is a peek behind the veil.
Yeah. I guess there's so many books that I read but A Course in Miracles stands out the most. There's a man who calls himself Master Teacher, and my roommates thought I was in a cult when I was watching this guy's videos, but he taught me about A Course in Miracles before I even knew that it was a book. It was like I found these videos randomly, and he was reading from A Course in Miracles, and he was saying this is Jesus teachings, and I had to research that. But it's like they were so profound, I couldn't really understand how is this in the Bible, but he would use both the Bible and Course in Miracles side by side at times. But yeah, that was one of the more incredible experiences I had reading slowly through A Course in Miracles over several years. It was as though there was a completely different way of looking at everything, like upside down way of looking at things that book was presenting, that I don't even know if I've heard any Course in Miracles teacher really do justice to the depth of the truth that book is just pouring out with every page. So that was
I
very
have,
profound.
and I'm looking at them right now.
Thank you guys. Have a great day.
Just saying, for those who haven't had the pleasure, Mike is an artist at pulling concepts and beautiful sacred passages from A Course in Miracles, and that book is stunning. And hearing you read it and how you select what you invite us to hear sometimes, Mike, is just beautiful. I just so love it.
Like a walking
need to get into that more.
encyclopedia.
Yes, though, as I alluded to, I stopped short of referring to Mike as a scholar, as a spiritual scholar, because a scholar is necessarily, in my view and definition, at length or at a distance from that which it seeks to understand. And Mike is a teacher, and Mike is a teacher by being. He literally just is and embodies these things and these concepts. And that's actually something I wanted to ask you, Mike, is your relationship to doing versus being. And I wanted to ask a question like, on a day-to-day basis, how much, like by percentage or, whatever, do you feel you are doing versus being, in whatever those mean to you?
Well, I think that we're kind of talking about the work on the conscious mind and the work in the unconscious realms. And if you take an example of like riding a bicycle or driving a car, the initial experience is heavily focused on the physical aspect of it. And you're thinking about how do you steer and how is the tire hitting the road? And you're trying very hard to focus on the physical aspect of it. But as you become a very good driver, you start thinking more in terms of what are the other drivers in the road thinking, and you have the capacity to be angry at them because of assumptions about what they're thinking, and it becomes a whole other metaphysical component to the experience. And you can, and I feel like you can open your heart enough to actually know what's going to happen on the road, and feel love for other people on the road. And I don't want to recommend this, but you can be like Luke Skywalker if you get to a certain point and you can blindfold yourself and you can still drive just fine if you have that level of sight opened up where you're not operating as much within the physical illusion. You're trusting and allowing from the higher state of being which you are choosing to become. So I think it's that way with everything, where when we're at work, we can kind of turn a lot of things on autopilot when the deeper lesson of the transformations of the heart are what we want to be focusing on more, and becoming more and more the one infinite creator, and becoming more and more capable of seeing others as the one infinite creator, such that we are opening up to their reality and incorporating our light with theirs more to build the new kingdom of heaven on earth.
I really feel, Mike, that you hit the nail on the head with two words. You said trying, and that's what I equate to doing. And then you said allowing, and that's what I equate to being. And I think you described it perfectly. And it also kind of reminded me of our recent conversation about you and coding, that when you are in that super comfort zone, writing in a language that you just know inside and out, that you actually enjoy that. And that, to me, I would describe, even though there's an outward positive creative expression going on there, I have to imagine that there's also a state of flow, and maybe even to an extent some amount of channeling going on, that you're really just allowing that to come through. So even though there's something being created affirmatively, I would still tend to think of that in more of a being aspect than doing, when you're that comfortable.
Yeah, definitely. And it became very clear as I was banging my head against the wall trying to learn to be a programmer, that the state of vibration that I'm in determines how easily the right course of action flows out of me. So and the more this is the same with a lot of jobs. The more you're stuck in a frustrated state, the less likely you are to have the intuitive guidance of exactly what it is that needs to be done. And I remember having a debate with a programmer about the need to follow steps versus the need to go with the gut reaction. And it's like the more you realize the value of your intuition, the more naturally you can find all the bugs in the code and solve them, know exactly where the problem is, know exactly, you can literally just have a feeling that a particular file is the source of the bug, and you can just go straight to that file, have a feeling that you need to scroll down a certain number of lines of code in that file to have a feeling that you need to look at that particular function in the code. So yeah, intuition is very critical to becoming very effective. And having a higher, taking a nap, for example, is one of the most useful things a programmer can do, I think, to solve any issue.
That almost branches into effortlessness, Mike, in that state of flow. And I'm such a big fan of that, and always want to highlight and emphasize that to people, that when they encounter that, when they see that in another person, gosh, you have an opportunity to acknowledge that, to align to that in your own experience. That's beautiful.
When you were doing the looking at the master teacher stuff, and you said your roommates were joking with you that you were in a cult, were they fully joking with you, or were they kind of joshing you to the point where it became something that you had to really follow your heart and rise above this? Was it joking, or was it ridicule?
There was ridicule of other things too, because I was trying to be a proselytizer at that time still. And so the more I was trying to push it on them, the more they had to resist. It's like, we do not need your truth, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
That seems to be something that happens to a lot of people that start the journey, is that when you are with a certain group of people and you start to open your mind up to these things and it feels right to you, all you want to do is bring that to the people around you that you care about. And with certain people, there seems to be a lot of resistance. And what were some of those moments in your life where, there was a lot of resistance, but it really helped you grow in realizing, like you said, that we don't have to eat your truth, or, sometimes it's just not the right time for people, to keep growing for yourself, but don't let the discouragement of others, were there moments in your life where that really helped you grow into the person and the true seeker that you are, following your intuition and not necessarily listening to the world around you?
Yeah, absolutely. Understanding how to talk to people and give them little bits at a time is very important. And the best example that I can think of right now is when I tried to wake up my dad. He was like the first person I put together a DVD pack for. Now I'm putting together a DVD pack every month for people who attend meetings at the libraries. But I put together like all the stuff that I thought was the most amazing at the time, and he couldn't handle hardly any of it. And I eventually I got him to just watch one thing that finally kind of started cracking a door open, which was the 9/11 Mysteries documentary. That was a very, very, it wasn't emotional. It was just outlining facts that you can look into. And that kind of allowed me to take a step back and realize that the best truth is kind of conveyed without strong emotions attached to it.
Yeah.
It's just, here are the simple facts.
Not to be too. Oh.
Yeah. So I was going to say, it feels like the most easy way to feel comfortable is just guiding people through the tidbits of what are the actual facts. And then you don't have to feel as attached to the material, which somebody can have a very strong emotional reaction to if there's a lot of distortions and emotional baggage baked into that documentary or whatever you're sharing with them. So there's a lot of wisdom that is involved in discerning what to share and what is actually something people can digest based on where they're at. So for example, the biggest trigger point for something like 9/11 truth was people who were just saying this was all George W. Bush, and if you should give that to a Republican and they're super lover of George W. Bush, then immediately whatever they hear against George W. Bush is like it was the it was absolutely completely false. There was nothing worth listening to. So understanding the people that you're sharing with and that's a process of opening your heart to that person too, understanding them enough and to interact with them, and not just shoot them with a fire hose, but understand where they're coming from on everything. You can work with them on taking the next step that they're seeking.
All right. So I want to ask a question about that when it comes to teaching, and go back a step to the last question that Nick was talking about. Carefully when we use words like cult that get thrown around, especially in spiritual circles. And I encountered something recently, and I'd really like to get your take on it. So I had a friend who's Dutch, and she attended an online meditation, and she messaged me and said that the center, or the kind of the organization, I guess, that put it on is actually based in Denver. And she said, "Oh, have you ever heard of them?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, I'm trying to figure out still if they're a cult," but she really liked the meditation. And so I go to their site, and I kind of immediately find this resistance, but I'm not sure whether I'm really going to honor this resistance or not. But basically, you have these kind of gurus or masters that even have special names. And it's like, I stop immediately as soon as I encounter someone that is either putting themselves out or is otherwise put out as something that is special or different than what it is that we all are and are moving to accept. I kind of become resistant to that because it just seems very egoic and hierarchical, et cetera. But then at the same time, this particular site that describes these three people that kind of lead this thing describes them as more or less channels that are bringing through other entities that have incarnated in this life. And so then, well, on that regard, am I completely discounting something that is possibly incarnated, from a higher level dimension and is become realized in awakened state, in this incarnation? So maybe, it's not to be thrown out with the bathwater either. But I guess I'd just like to know how you have encountered either religious or even spiritual groups in which there is not only some apparent leader, but also in that leader is more than, say, a humble servant of like an Eastern guru kind of thing, but is much more revered and seen as special or powerful, and how you encounter that and what your kind of gut reaction is to it.
Well, there's a couple things that come to mind. The simplest way to evaluate any organization or teacher is to know them by their fruits, I feel, and see how many people are being helped, and see what is actually happening with people, and are people becoming more inspired to do their own work and to do their own service, or is it just being focused in one little bubble? That's one indicator of the value of something. But I think there's a kind of bigger question here of what is actually the core important things about a religious organization or activity. And I love what Alan Watts said about, you can take on any distortions of a religion. You can wear the beads, you can sing the song, you can do the dance, and you can enjoy it like a child is enjoying a game, and it's a form of play. And if people want to play with their identity, if people want to play with their sense of specialness and different ways, then you can choose to go along with that, and release the need to form any judgments, and just play with it and see for yourself if you are reaping fruits, and see what's coming from it. So you can play and then distill, as Ross says, experience all that is desired, distilling the love and the light within those experiences. Nothing shall be overcome. That which is not needed falls away. So,
okay, let me ask this then. So kind of, again, along the similar lines, if let's say you have someone in a spiritual leadership sort of position and is put forth as someone that is bringing forth more light, and they are, let's say, for the sake of this conversation, more egoically oriented, and perhaps even in the raw context, even perhaps negatively polarized, but simply to understand the nature of energy in a collective, and is set up to want to be in control or on top of that. But let's, negative or otherwise, let's say that that's an egoic endeavor, and then let's say somebody comes along that seeks to understand the concepts that this teacher is putting out. Do you imagine that that teacher energetically is capable, or I should say, is the opportunity even available for the student to encounter a vibration that indeed is not technically present within the teacher, but perhaps that the student can still align to, sort of in their own imagination? Or do you think that the guru mechanics are such that the field of the guru themselves, and this has a lot to do with initiatic paths in both Eastern and Western traditions, but do you think that the energy field of the guru themselves is informing the energy field of the student, and so on and so on and so on, and that's how these lineages tend to work energetically?
I think it's a mixture, but I think the law of one says regarding the experience of the mind, that to the pure, all that is encountered speaks of the love and light of the infinite creator. And so you can choose to interpret any catalyst along any path. And so anybody can become your guru in that sense and be just as valid of a guru if you're using the highest light available to you to shine. And also you can, I mean, in a context of an organization, usually no one is just getting away with being 100% service to self if it's an organization full of people who are honest seekers, because there is some karmic contract, I feel, that requires the leaders to meet certain requirements to mirror the expectations of the people who they're attracting. And so there'll be naturally challenges for them to dominate people who are liberated, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. It does make sense. They are going to attract the ones that are going to both be resonant or somehow complementary to what it is that they're doing, for the catalyst to probably be optimized on both sides potentially.
Yeah. It's just more fuel, just more catalyst for the fire.
And it seems to me like that's what you're trying to do with Ascension Works. Like, you are putting out this space that is kind of a place to go find catalyst, whether it's from the metaphysical, whether it's from the physical, the health, the spiritual, any of these aspects. And that is what, when I speak with you, it seems like that's your great burning desire, is to just, like you said, distill the experience of the religion, but for you, it's just distilling your experience of the world in all these different facets and saying, hey, look, this is what helped me. Did it help any of you? And what helped you? And it seems to be a great project. I mean, I was just reading the comments and it said, Trish was talking about, she had somebody that said that they cured cancer from eating apple seeds. And Debbie was saying that she sees that the world is kind of waking up more and more. And it does seem like that we are going through this process. And I know from the law of one, they talk about the earth is going through this third to fourth dimension change, and the people within it will, they're either going to go through the change themselves, or they're going to kind of go crazy. And is that one of the things that you see, like, you're trying to help those people that are on the cusp kind of fall, like, look, if you start looking at these things, you could fall in this direction instead of going to crazy town. Does that seem to be one of your ultimate goals? Because when I speak to you, it seems to be that.
Yeah, people need gentle guidance, I think. Yeah.
And just to hold a forum for a place to discuss and share the information.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Ascension Works feels like a way where we can have a seamless sort of spectrum from completely raw community content, organically driven by seekers, and people can share anything they want, and we try to stay completely uncensored. And then at the same time, we can curate content based on what we feel is more needed to be known. And that's been my goal with waking people up is open the discussion for anyone and everything, and then give some of my pieces, my bits to include in that.
Yeah, and we were speaking, and you were saying how you don't want to censor anyone, but there's a certain level of when people are in it just to chop other people down and to debase their ideas, that at a certain level, you want it to be a place of good and you want it to be a place of open, free sharing of ideas. But at a certain level, you know what you're trying to do, and those people kind of have to be certainly not sectioned off, but just, if there's people that are trying to help and someone floods the market with hate, then there's got to be a way to deal with that. What do you think are the possibilities for moving forward and trying to elevate, non-biasedly elevate that which seems to be seekers helping seekers, as opposed to, I guess haters hating?
Well, there are terms of use on our agreement to use the site, and so we did have to add one clause into what was essentially a template, which I wrote the phrase that we don't allow excessively incendiary philosophies. And so the idea is, if you're trying to start just a flame war fire in there, it really is just like you're not doing anyone any value. So we can just point people to that, and then we can hide what we need to, and still let people have conversation if they want to, and just don't require everyone to see it.
I love that you call that excessively incendiary. So incendiary, totally welcome. Like
a little bit is
that's
great,
fine, but not excessively incendiary.
Yeah,
with
exactly.
a reasonable amount of incendiariness.
Yeah, that's really what we're wanting.
Almost seems like having like a mosh pit in Ascension, where it's like, look, if you want to just jump around and smash into each other and keep that going, we're going to have the mosh pit over here. But if you want to have like constructive dialogue where you're not throwing hate, we're going to put that over here.
Yeah.
That's going to be extremely difficult.
Yeah. Maybe I should have a forum just called the mosh pit or something, that people can just have the excessively incendiary section.
Yeah. I mean, some people love mosh pits. I mean, they love getting in them, and they're not trying to throw elbows and hit people in the face, but they are trying to just like push around some of that energy they got stuck in them, and it does help. Yeah. Although when people are in there trying to hurt people, now you're getting to that point where you're like, are you trying to shake things loose within yourself and within the rest of the world, or are you just trying to watch it burn?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's an egoic consciousness in fear of annihilation that is desperately trying to defend itself against higher vibrations that would seek to assume and braid that will into divine will. And so this is the inner conflict that we all face, for sure.
And I think that there's also just some degree of random energy that hasn't found a home yet. And that's just what anger is. And so, anger needs an outlet to a degree, and it has to be channeled in the direction of control or acceptance. And if you're not accentuating it to the point where it is being channeled properly, it can just be this churning, awkward energy that you're expressing in a non-coherent manner. And so that's why I think, people expressing themselves in an angry way can be helpful. But I've also heard, with Gestalt therapy, I think it's called, I had a friend who kept recommending to people, you should take a baseball bat, go out into the woods and start hitting a tree. And it's part of me is like, oh, just hit the ground or something. You don't have to hit a tree. But the idea is that people have pent up rage. Pent up rage has to be let out somehow. And this has helped a lot of people to just, maybe even just screaming or shouting. It's like,
scream therapy.
Go scream at nothing instead of screaming at the person you're angry at. So usually you can get rid of that without having to channel it in a negative way.
It seems to be the way it seems to be the way that society is kind of going. I'm almost 40, and so I remember the time when cell phones were being first brought in, and some of the people that grew up only in the cell phone era, that is their outlet. And because they're just screaming into the void, and the void can answer back in the form of these anonymous other screams, it just turns into this like a binary star system where they're just feeding into each other and they're just getting more and more energized. But like you said, anger does have its place in this scream therapy, or a baseball bat to the ground. They even have I can't remember what they're called, but it's something like smash somethings, where you just go into a junkyard and they have stuff for you to just beat up with a baseball bat. It's like that physical release. It is sometimes needed, and I'm sure you're dealing with, like, without naming names, like what are some of the things that you're having to deal with these people doing these virtual smash rooms, but they're doing it with their words, and you're sitting there as the one trying to help curate and help people with Ascension, hence Ascension Works, as these other people are using that as their Ascension method, but it's not helping the other people that don't want to use that.
Yeah. Certainly there's a lot of big areas of conflict, like with politics and all kinds of things that we were taught when we were kids. People start disagreeing about, and people are programmed to be very confident. They know things very strongly from their past. They feel like they've done the research, they've done the homework, and it's settled in their mind. So there's just a lot of overconfidence, I think. But that is like an attachment to being the one who knows the truth, and not having a window into the idea that maybe I don't know everything, so I'm going to be open to hearing one more viewpoint. But it is almost like the default of our society right now to just be bickering back and forth endlessly along the same paths.
I want to dive into that a little bit there, because when we talk about things that we can know, this goes back to what I was talking about with the investment into the illusion. And in sort of my lexicon, you can't know, capital K, know anything that is within the illusion, because it's necessarily transient and illusory. And that which you can know is what is true, and what's true is always true, and therefore exists outside of space and time. I wanted to ask Mike, as you, and this touches on a lot of things, and it's important for a lot of reasons, and I want to know your answer to this. I see you reflect on and react to and express and be an encounter with us and lots of people, and to see how it seems that you view other people with a ton of love. And so I am curious that when you, in a more or less vacuum, or even in response to either catalyst or even something that's relatively benign or something like that, when you just snap to a picture of the totality that is you, the entire energetic system that creates the wholeness of you, what is the inspired feeling? So, and again, I mean it in the context that if you were to look at Nick, for example, and you have a reflection of, like, what feelings that inspires within you, I want to know how you feel when you picture yourself that way.
This is very hard to put into words. I almost would say people have to do psychedelics or have some transcendental experiences with meditation to have a feeling of being not separate on a deeper level. Is that where you're going?
Well, yes, and I mean the sheer affection, the sheer impressiveness and awe that the totality of our energetic system, starting with the monad all the way down through the soul and the energy bodies and down into physical reality. That's the part that I'm curious about. When you see that as thing, as it pertains to you and it's your system, most of us tend to have a what I would describe as sharply negative self view, first and foremost, because we're in abject denial of our own divinity. So, first and foremost, I think A Course in Miracles puts it pretty plainly that we hate ourselves, that we're insane. I mean, it's like, it is that stark. And I, at first, was a little bit resistant to some of the language in A Course in Miracles. And then I kind of liked it too. And I've kind of, certainly adopted a little bit more and tried to get people to, speak and comprehend these things in a little bit more stark terms. But that's what I'm getting at, is just not just when you see the magic and perfection of the system that is God, but can you see that within yourself? You as the expression of that perfection, is that a reflection that you are often able to see in yourself?
Well, you're talking about a you and yourself as an entity that is ultimately a stumbling block to experiencing the higher view of the self too. So so that's why I really am focusing more on archetypes lately, because of the fact that if we really think that there's just like 22 people out there, the 22 archetypes, there's 22 personalities that are people are playing with in many different forms, but you could say that we're all just the same 22 people, and we're all just exploring. We can continuously kind of snap out of the idea that I have to be this separate self, and instead of just being the logos, the heart of the deeper mind that is temporarily having particular kinds of glimpses into the facets of the self, knowing itself
in limitation, but working perfectly. That's my whole point, is that if you can look at the totality of your experience and understand that it works absolutely perfectly at every single level, and we are given carte blanche to manifest an experience exactly of our choosing, and in that there's perfection, and there is assurance and stability and stillness and calm, because it's just perfect at every single level. And yes, to Trisha's point, we have free will to choose an experience in imperfection and in limitation, as Ra teaches quite plainly. And that acceptance is amazing, to realize that I've created the imperfection and the challenge and all that in my life. That's empowering. And to know that I have perfect ability to create challenge and to call forth catalyst and to record the frequencies and patterns within my field that need to be there, so that I can call forth the lessons that I need to clear them later. So, I mean, again, the system works absolutely flawlessly. And that's been a new development for me. That's been a new, more recent thing, that I can look at myself in a more holistic way and say, no, it actually is perfect at every level. And yes, I also enjoy my experience a lot also, and I'm feeling a lot of physical benefits, I think, from that as well. But really just in awe of this system that is us all, obviously. And as likely or easily as I am to want to deflect that away from myself and say things like all of us, because this is all of us, I do feel that we have to own that wholly. And I think this starts to get into the dual, non-dual, paradigm, where to wholly accept your divinity is to accept the self as a true and pure expression of the one infinite creator.
Yeah. Know the self, accept the self, become the creator. It's the disciplines. And it's a progressive level of trusting and having the faith that it is all perfect and happening according to the perfect balance that we're needing. So it really is a discipline. And the more we can recognize that there is a reason for this experience, the more we can get excited that there's a new lesson that is there to be learned that hadn't yet been learned.
I promise, trust it every time. That's what I was just saying recently. Like, I feel like I'm a walking experiment. It's like, if you want to know what it's like to just walk out on the limb and just absolutely trust that everything's just going to unfold the way it needs to be, and to release any semblance of control or expectation on, what it should be, versus what it might seek to be. And I keep telling people, I'll let you know when it fails, but or it doesn't serve me. But that certainly has been my experience recently.
I think one of the great recent experiences in Mike's life, and Mike, you tell me if you want to go down this topic or not, because as the main face of Ascension Works, I don't know how much you want to divulge into your personal life, but your family seemed to be such a great mirror and catalyst in your life. And whenever you talk about them, the joy in your face from the mirror that you're seeing, and that seems to have been just like, if you were growing at a factor of 10, they forced you up to like a factor of 100. And if you want, I feel like this is almost should be like a two-parter where we chat and we throw our ideas at you and ask our questions, and then give everybody time to find the interview and then sift through the comments at the other things, because it's so rare that in especially something like this, to have such access to the person who's trying to help the entire community, without it, going into that layer where we were talking about, like, it's a cult and you got to go find the person and you got to sit with the person and all that. Like, for people to be able to go about their everyday life, but also to have this digital resource and to know who's helping that digital resource, I think that's rare to have such great access to that person and be able to ask them questions. So, like, we should definitely do a second part, get people to come up with their questions, because I'm sure there's a million things going to be running through people's minds when they hear the things that you have to talk about. But also, definitely, if you want to, I'm sure everybody would love to see your face light up when you talk about the mirror of your family and the joy that they've brought into your life.
Yeah. I'm always open to answering people's questions. Although my time is more limited to respond to all the emails that I get. It's like, and sometimes I don't even know if the people I get emails from are actually people. Sometimes it seems like there's weird patterns. It's like, is this an AI? It's just so hard to know these days. But so in a forum like this, I know people who are joining the Zoom meetings are not AI. So that's that's a good time to ask me questions too. But so yeah, my personal evolution was definitely accelerated tremendously when I met my wife, and I had no idea how much I didn't know about my own distortions, because I'd never been in a close relationship, and it was like I was not even ready. And we ask ourselves often, like, if we had known each other in our 20s, would we have been able to do it? Would we have been able to reach these levels of connection, or would we have just been so insecure or immature? It's hard to say. It's like we each had to have our own clearing to get to the point where, when we did get together, we were immediately using psilocybin and MDMA and LSD, and just bonding on a level that I'd never bonded with anyone. And the Blu-ray is what starts to open so well. And this was described in the case of Eleanor Roosevelt being the great teacher to President Roosevelt. It was referenced in the Law of One that she was his great teacher by opening the Blu-ray, because it's like, in our normal everyday interactions, it's like it's business, and you're not really having to do the deepest processing to overcome all the blockages to fully expressing from the heart, fully, openly, and transparently. But to find a partner which is balanced enough, or at least willing to work on the balances. It's the willingness to be together and work on the lessons in a very focused manner that leads to the inevitable realization of every single blockage that's holding back the communication, free flowing of honest communication. And then when you can break down all those walls, then it becomes easier to do it with everyone else too. So that's why it starts with someone close to you, I think. And now with my son, he's just a whole other dimension of mirroring that I had no idea, because it's like all of my deepest distortions from childhood, I think, are being shown to me, and I still have to process what those mean, which are basic greed and bodily desires, even, addictions to sugar and food, all of it is there. And I'm still trying to wonder what is truly discipline, and what is love? How much is there the need for the tempering of just giving him what he wants to help him feel my love so that he trusts me? And so that has also affected my perceptions of, for example, how much I should be working myself to assist other individuals, and where do I need to draw the boundaries with sharing with others individuals, to keep my life balanced. So that, my life was just so out of balance before I knew Elizabeth. I was staying up till 4 or 5 a.m. and feeling guilty that I wasn't getting more work done, never having a steady sleep schedule. To a degree, I've gotten back there since having a kid, where it's like the only time I get work done is when he's asleep. But I think I'm still burning through a lot of karma in that process of attachments to outcomes of getting certain things done, versus trusting that there is a perfect plan for my day that my higher self has in mind, if I'm willing to let go of the attachments to getting a certain amount of things done. Because ultimately there's always time to do more. There's always time. And so these are the lessons I'm still working through.
It sounds like that became a true North Star, in that you were a ship just kind of floating in the ocean, and you were getting a lot of miles under your belt. But, to have that true North Star made you feel like, okay, now I'm getting somewhere. Ascension Works is out there. I'm helping the world that way. That was one of your goals. Tick. Now you have your wife and your son, and now like, okay, so now it's not just tick for everyone else. Now I have to carve out a certain amount of time to curate energy and love for myself and for all of the members of my family. And kind of, like I said, a North Star, like helping guide the ship, instead of just spending your energy anywhere and everywhere, all with altruistic intention, but kind of just, you're blowing on a bonfire, you're trying to put it out. It's never going to go out. It's already too big. So you have to figure out a way to go at it more targeted. I think Ascension Works is definitely doing that. I had an account for a while, and I just recently started digging through it. It seems like you said, it's a place where people are getting together. They're doing their thing. They're sharing their knowledge. And when you're talking about when you were in college, I'm just going to guess at the fact that, lots of time in libraries. It wasn't just www.disclosure.com or Google this or Google that. You were putting in the legwork and the, digging through the Dewey Decimal System to find the back corner of the library that was in the basement. Because I've been to those places in the libraries. They always hide it in the back, down in the corner. And you're just sitting there, and maybe one person passes all day long, but you're saying, look, world, this knowledge is there. What else do you know? What did you find that I didn't find? I went, not that book, this book. What did you find in those first two that I didn't? This seems to be a journey of love that you since you've got that North Star, now you've got to focus, and a little bit of time here, a little bit of time here. And does it seem like it's more fulfilling than frustrating at this point in your life?
It's an interesting question. I think, yes, definitely. I think the layers of frustration are mostly shed away. And so, but it's still a lot of challenges, but it feels like I'm floating more than I used to be. I'm not drowning, I'm floating.
Yeah.
Same ocean.
That's nice.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, Mike, as we, I think, kind of circling towards the tail end of this, I'm curious what metaphysical concept has been kind of present for you in the form of an itch that you're looking to scratch, or what question has sort of been central for you that is still looking for an answer? Or is there something just, again, kind of presently or in this moment, just from a metaphysical concept, just kind of the nuts and bolts or block and tackle here, something that you're trying to get your arms around?
Well, I recently started reading through the book by Ram Dass called Miracle of Love, about stories about Neem Karoli Baba. And there was a section of that book that hit me in a very surprising way, which was about food and the the value of preparing food with love, seeing the food as the creator, which to me is completely connected to the sort of magical working of the Christian church and seeing Christ in the elements, the the bread and the wine. And of course, now I've extended that into all food, that we can potentially be seeing Christ in everything that we're drinking. We're becoming what we're eating. We're becoming more the infinite creator as we see the infinite creator in the things that we're eating. This is just like an ongoing magical work that we're doing. But one of the things that was so surprising in the book was that there was no concern over, or very little concern. There was some suggestion that simple foods are easier to work with, but there was no concern over the amount of sugar, like sweets and desserts and greasy foods was all what they're being fed a lot at the ashram. And but there was still a strictness around who prepared this food and was it blessed by the guru. It's like the food had to be blessed and it had to be seen as blessed, and there had to be an understanding that this is not polluted in some way. But I'm still working with a reorientation of the way I view the physical reality as a constant tool of reinforcing the one infinite creator being manifest and becoming that.
And would you say that you think that this sort of activity in recognizing what it is that you're putting in is physiologically rewiring, maybe even at a DNA level, et cetera, your physical makeup to hold a higher and higher vibration?
Yeah, but DNA could be seen as an interface to our metaphysical light body to a degree,
Right.
I think. So yeah, there's these connections to the foundations of the quantum, or the world beyond the physical, that is forming the physical, that is we're really working on.
So the
Yeah.
One of the
epigenetics and that kind of thing.
One of the ways I know that you're vegan, Mike, so you don't eat butter, but and Alex and I, in our Ayurvedic training, they taught us how to make ghee, and it is absolutely amazing the variability in making ghee. Like when we lived in Philadelphia, we were cooking it on a gas stove, and with the same pot, we called our ghee pot, and it's the same pot, and more often than not, it was the same type butter, the same brand, because we knew it was more organic and all this and that. But when it was Alex and I doing it, when it was Alex and I, and we were teaching friends, the energy in the room would literally make a process that would be 15 minutes. Sometimes it would be 2 hours other times. And it was not burnt. It was like you could do the same 4 sticks of butter in the same pot, on the same burner, in the same range, in the same area with one other person. And it takes 4 times as long, but it's still just the same good quality. It's like, it's imbuing that into the food. I could totally see how what they were talking about in that book could be real, in that it's more about the energy and the preparation and that than the actual, obviously there's physical attributes to it, but there is a lot more metaphysical in this world than people are willing to put into some things. That everybody wants to be so logical and left brained that they just kind of completely write off the whole rest of it, when you could probably influence the left brain physical with the metaphysical more than the other way around.
I 100% agree with that, and that's what I've been saying lately. Another of my experiments is that I'm shockingly bad at maintaining the temple, if you will, or certainly in the same regard and under the same conditions and circumstances that most people are expected to, or do that, and I don't. And yet, going back to what I said earlier, I am still in awe of the totality and knowing of whence it comes and the source of which it is from, that level of respect and reverence for my physical incarnation has led me into a far more healthy state of being than I've been in my adult life. And so I'm a good example of somebody, to Mike's point. I was really glad to hear you say that, Mike, that they weren't as much on what it is. I eat whatever I want, whenever I want, as much of it or as little. Frankly, my appetite is quite a bit lower. You talked about fasting earlier. I used to do what's called incremental fasting. Now I think I do what's called incidental fasting, which is basically quite often I don't eat because I don't have an appetite. Like I don't usually eat breakfast. I usually don't eat lunch, but if I'm hungry, then I go eat lunch. That's it. I eat when I feel like eating and eat as much as I feel like eating. But I do no strenuous exercise or anything like that. And yet I've lost 60 pounds since the beginning of COVID, which is basically when my spiritual path started effectively. And that's with no diet or exercise at all. And so I firmly believe that this is very much a case of mental configuration manifesting the physical body. And so everything that you said, Mike, about Neem Karoli Baba and ingesting the foods and understanding and recognizing, claiming the divinity of God as substance as it's being ingested, in order to incorporate that divinity and its truth into your physical being. And you're bringing energetically that which is metaphysical into the physical.
Right.
And I just asked Alex if she could go look on our bookshelf, but some people need like you were talking about your dad and the 9/11 mysteries was that kind of opening the doorway for him. So it sounds like some people have to go from left brain to get to the right brain truths, whereas some people just kind of intuit those right brain truths and bring it into the left brain. And the book is called, it's very thin. It's called the Phoenix Protocol, and it's by an ex-astronaut. And it is very, I would say, having not read Ram Dass' Miracle of Love, that food section, hearing your description of it, it sounds like the Phoenix Protocol is very much the left way brain of getting to that right way thinking, whereas that's the right way brain of pushing into the left brain. And he talks about, because he was an astronaut, and the process of the body and how it goes through different phases as you fast, like for a day, for 2 days. But it's called the Phoenix Protocol. You can even look up, he's got videos on YouTube. But I definitely wanted to get one more question in before, because I know we're getting towards, we're already 15 minutes past the hour mark. But what are some of the things that you would ask the community, people watching this, that you would want from the community? How can the community help you progress Ascension Works? Whether it be getting people in contact with you to do interviews, to get things out there, or whether it be, whatever. I can't even think of the things that you could be thinking of on the back end of this whole project.
Well, I think the most helpful thing is for people to share the most dense light that they have, that has helped them. So sharing on the forums, on Ascension Works, starting forum threads about the books that they love, the authors that they love, all of the highest, densest forms of light that are needing to be shared more. We can just keep on working together to figure out what those packets of wisdom and light are. And this is very inspirational for people to keep on sharing what is most inspirational to them. Yeah. And to a degree, I think there may be some benefit if people form local communities, not just online. I think everyone should be on meetup.com, look for groups in their area. And just like you guys were able to meet with me locally, like people need a community locally. I think there's a different level of growth that comes from face-to-face communities. So, and I don't know if Ascension Works TV can ever be as good as Meetup and performing that service, because meetup.com is a broad cross section of all kinds of people, and you can find groups where people are seekers, but they haven't gotten exposed to all the weird stuff yet. They're just interested in yoga or simple discussions around political or religious areas, and they can once you meet your tribe, you can continue down the deeper paths together with a greater speed, I think, and efficiency when you have more people working with you like that.
Is there like a bulletin board area on Ascension Works? Because I know Meetup does it to perfection, and it's easy to interface straight to that. But is there an area where they can go where it kind of segues them into, people said I went to this group and not so good, but I went to this group and it was amazing. Almost like what's that thing you rate things on? Well, I don't even know. No, yeah. When you rate like a restaurant or something like that, I don't do
Yelp.
tech. Yelp,
Yeah,
that's it. Thanks, Debbie.
Debbie got it too.
Yeah, do you have like a Meetup Yelp on Ascension Works to just help people? Because everybody's time is pulled in so many different directions to help people weed through it.
Yeah, well, I do want to. Well, I've added a category for groups that is specifically for regions, so you can add a region, but I want to do a lot more work to enhance those features and make it more like a map, because I totally could do that easily. Maybe in the next couple months here, make a map people can use to zoom in on their area. But there is a forum section on there you can post about anything. So that's the bulletin board right now is the most convenient for talking about any specific any groups or resources.
Would there be and now I'm totally out of my realm, and you guys are going to be able to pick up the ball where I drop it here, but would there be, if somebody wanted to help you and be like, hey, I heard you wanted to make a map, I do coding, would there be a language that you would prefer if someone wanted to help? And hey, I made this, look through it, as opposed to you having to do it from scratch.
I've already done it with a different website I made called the New Earth Network, and I'm phasing out from that. So the code is mostly there. I'm just kind of trying to make the most coherent thing. It's
but that's
hard.
A broader question. Would you like, or would that be helpful, or it's
not just hard?
That. Yeah, it is kind of hard with another developer. I mean, you can sort of engineer and do design, but then you're also kind of doing troubleshooting and debugging of theirs. And how would that look for you, Mike?
To kind of crowdsource some of the work that you want to get done.
This is too big
on the quality of the crowd, I guess.
Yeah. This is too big of a discussion, but I do think that there's value in having more kinds of volunteers in many areas. So that might be more of a new section I should create for volunteer needs.
Or like an email that people who were interested in that could contact you and just say, hey, I do this. I'm good with graphics, not so good with coding. Where do you need help with that kind of stuff?
Yeah, this could be your Yelp guy.
Yeah, I'll have to think about this more. There's been corralling people to be productive as volunteers is much harder than hiring them to be productive too. So there's a part of me that is considering, if we should just open it up to crowdfunding investment, and then people can help with just money, and then we can hire people to accelerate things, which is how basically all businesses operate these days, with some seed investment. And I just kind of was able to do this with very, very little resources. And it was kind of a discipline that I wanted to see if I could do it get something profitable without actually having any investors. And I think we've done pretty good at making something useful. So
yeah, because I see a lot of forums, especially in the more of like the governmental truthers forums. A lot of the things that I watch with people talking about those kind of things, where they start the platform and it just, through their own just drive and information that they have, just rockets itself to a plateau. And then when it hits that plateau, either they're kind of burning out, or they need to invest their time elsewhere, or, they're at a certain point, you've gotten to the limit of the amount of knowledge that you can put out there into the world. And you just kind of need, whether it be information or help with accelerating the platform, like you want to get past that plateau. And, I don't want to see you get to that point where the plateau just kind of rides out, because you've been driving and you've been driving and you've been driving and pushing it forward. And now it's gotten to this thing where it's so big that it is sounding like it is becoming what you wanted. Like it is becoming greater than you. It is becoming this community, and it's getting not beyond the realm of you being able to do it yourself, but it could be getting close. And how would people, what would be the best way for them to contact you with their skills and how they would be able to help you?
Well, so you can send any information or suggestions to info@ascensionworks.tv. That's the email address. That's the main email address.
Okay.
And yeah, so people can always reach out to us or the contact page on the website. And we're always open. I think we respond to pretty much every email that comes in. So yeah.
That's good. It's good for people to know, because when you get to that point and like Debbie and Trish were talking about earlier, it does seem like this thing is just a snowball rolling downhill, and just keep pushing it. You know what I mean? Don't let a rock get in its way and the snowball splatters on a rock, because if it keeps rolling downhill, it can be that, mental revolution that you're talking about, this societal revolution where people just start investing their time and energy into the things that can change the world, as opposed to, just money and fancier cars and personal gains and shit.
And their willingness to ingest truth. And so having a website that's this massive repository for new kinds of truth, like you said, a lot of seekers have not looked at any of the weird stuff, as you say, which I really like. But and that appetite for that quote unquote weird stuff is only going to continue to skyrocket. And you have a resource that's a compendium for a lot of that information. So that's why I see that momentum only picking up.
Yeah. So did we look through all the questions in the chat? Was there anything we didn't cover yet?
I was kind of scared, but I'm not the best.
I think we did. Oh, the book mentioned by Ram Dass. What was the name of that, Mike? Oh, Miracle of Love. That's right.
Yep.
We answered that one too. So,
did you say there was a second part of the title? Is it Miracle of Love, Stories of Ram Dass?
Yeah, Stories about Neem Karoli Baba.
Yeah. Okay. Is that actually part of the title?
I think so. It might be a subtitle, but yeah. Certainly the only book by Ram Dass called Miracle of Love. So just Ram Dass's. And yeah, that was like, oh boy, it's such a magical book that there's something so mysterious about this individual who has transcended space and time that you can connect with him just from reading about him. And I feel a strong connection to him that is very mysterious and hard to explain. And I feel like he's connected to Jesus on some level. It's the same Christ consciousness, but it's a very playful spin on it that he embodied. He was not going to a cross. He was staying under the radar as much as he could throughout his life while doing miracle after miracle after miracle. And on the subject of food, another one that I'm still processing is that, he had a blanket. It was like when he had food to distribute, he would very often keep it under his blanket. So it didn't matter how much food was in the basket. That was like a separate dimension under that blanket, where it didn't matter what originally went in there, but because there was the food in there, and no one knows how much food is actually still in there, he can keep on distributing food endlessly and feed everyone, just like Jesus.
Like the fish and the wine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and by keeping it under the blanket, it's almost like when you talk about DNA being an antenna between the physical and the metaphysical, he was a living embodiment of the physical, the bridge between the physical and the metaphysical. So if he kept it under the blanket, it was only his reality under there. And if his reality was an endless basket of fish, but nobody else could see it, nobody else could lend their doubt to it. Right. It was just one person walked up and grabbed a fish, and then he reached in and grabbed another one. And before anybody knew it, they looked behind him and 4,000 people had a fish, and his lap was only this big,
Right, and nobody doubted it.
Nobody doubted
it. One of the 4,000 people, they saw person after person after person, and they just assumed, well, I'm going to get one too. And sure enough, they did.
He kept his belief alive by suspending other people's disbelief.
And there were other people
more certain than other people's uncertainty and doubt.
Yeah. And it's interesting. There were other people who did it when he was visiting their house, and they didn't have much food to share. They knew not to look in the pot because they were devotees. They had seen this done. They knew not to look in the pot. They knew just to keep on serving everyone. And it was their faith in him that he was present. That was almost like it was like bypassing their lack of faith in themselves that they couldn't do it, but they were doing it just the same.
I feel like that is a beautiful analogy and kind of wrap up to this, because I feel like that's what you're doing with Ascension Works. You know what I mean? Like, you're putting it out there, and you have a blanket over some people's disbelief to kind of harbor people's belief, and just putting that into the world and being like, look where we could go. Or not look where we could go. Look where we are going. You know, you walk up and you get your fish. You walk up and you get your fish. Like, you come to the community and the community will thrive.
Right. Yeah. We hope to be the empty vessels by which people can perceive the infinite light and love that can just be continuously generated from the present moment, just endlessly.
Yeah.
Well, my hat's off to you, Mike, because you're doing a beautiful job of exactly that.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Yep.
Likewise. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your weekend, and I very much look forward to the next conversation.
Yep.
Which is tomorrow, right?
Tomorrow, Law of One discussion. Yep.
Nice. Is that the public or deep dive?
Public one.
Nice.
Yep.
All right.
All right.
See you guys then.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Thanks for joining,
Bye.
everyone.